People think staying in a big house means you've got a big life. But they don't see the kind of silence that can echo in marble hallways, the kind that eats you alive. I'm Rachel, 38 years old, a mother of 2, and I live in a home I didn't choose, with a man I no longer recognize. We've been married for over 10 years now. Daniel, my husband, is the kind of man who walks into a room and takes up all the air without saying a word. Confident, charming in public, sharp as a knife behind closed doors. He wasn't always like this. Or maybe I wasn't always able to see it. I come from an old money family in Chicago. Everything, the business, shares, properties, the estate, it's all in my name. Not because I asked for it, but because that's how my parents safeguarded their legacy. I was the only daughter, the responsible one, the one who followed every rule. Daniel knew this when we got married. He never said it outright, but I always sensed that his love had a condition, as long as I remain useful. Now, over a decade later, I realized that what I thought was partnership was actually ownership, not of him over me, but of his image, the successful man married to a powerful woman, raising beautiful kids in a perfect house. Living with a narcissist doesn't look dramatic. It looks like him speaking for you in every room. It looks like subtle jabs disguised as jokes. It feels like drowning in plain sight. He never raises his voice. That would ruin his polished image. Instead, he corrects me constantly, reminds me how lucky I am, shuts down every emotion I try to express with a smirk or silence. You're overthinking it, Rachel. You're always so emotional. You think anyone else would put up with this? I know all his lies now, the quiet ones, the ones told through his phone he never leaves, face up, the fake meetings, the emotional distance, the cold shoulder after dinners. But I stay, because of Liam and Sophie, our children, because my last name holds everything, businesses, homes, family name. And walking out of this marriage would mean not just leaving him, but ripping apart everything tied to me since birth. And truthfully, I am tired. I don't have the strength to fight for freedom and raise children in the middle of that war. I never meant to get close to anyone. I never searched for it. But healing sometimes walks in quietly, disguised as small conversations, safe eyes, and someone who actually listens. It started with casual chats. A man I met during a charity board event. Ethan. He's older, grounded, kind, divorced, calm in a way that makes me feel like breathing isn't supposed to hurt. He never asked personal questions, never flirted, just listened. And I found myself saying things I hadn't said in years, not even to myself. Not about Daniel, not about marriage, just about me. Books I used to read. Places I wanted to see, how I used to write poetry in college, things I buried so deep I'd forgotten they were part of me. He never touched me, never crossed a line, but the way I felt around him, respected, seen, calm, that alone felt louder than any physical affair ever could. Daniel doesn't know. He still thinks I'm too broken to notice his affairs, too soft to leave, too exhausted to speak up. And maybe he's right. Maybe I am too tired, but something inside me has begun to shift. Not because I met Ethan, but because I met myself again through him. For the first time in years, I've started journaling again, at night after the kids sleep. I write not about Daniel, but about Rachel, about the woman I used to be before marriage became a mask and motherhood became a shield. There's a moment, just a flicker, when you catch your reflection in a passing mirror, and for a second, you don't recognize the woman staring back. That moment came for me on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was in the walk-in closet, holding a designer dress Daniel had picked for me to wear to yet another fundraiser. It was flawless, elegant, cold, just like him. And as I held it up against myself, something inside me whispered, "This isn't you anymore." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the floor, surrounded by expensive shoes and 100 silent choices I didn't remember making. And I stayed there for almost an hour, not because I couldn't get up, but because I didn't know why I should. Daniel walked in that night, smelling like bourbon and someone else's perfume. He didn't notice I hadn't changed, didn't ask how my day was, just tossed his keys on the counter and launched into some story about a board meeting and how I should have smiled more at the last event. I nodded, just like I always do, because disagreeing with Daniel is like pouring gasoline on a fire he insists doesn't exist. He doesn't yell. He retreats. Days of silence, passive aggression, making me feel like I'm difficult, crazy, ungrateful. And the worst part, he's so polished in public that no one would ever believe he's a narcissist. The kids have started to notice. Liam asks me sometimes why Dad never stays for bedtime stories anymore. Sophie draws pictures of our family, but Daniel is always far in the corner of the page, his face left blank. That breaks me in ways I can't explain, because I wanted to protect them. I stayed for them, but now I wonder if I'm teaching them the wrong kind of love. Ethan never pries, never pushes. He shows up in small ways, a text asking if I've eaten a shared article he thought I'd like, or just sitting beside me at those long, painful board dinners, making subtle jokes only I can hear. He's not saving me. He knows I'm not ready to be saved. But somehow he makes me feel less invisible. Once, over coffee, he said something that stayed with me. You're not crazy, Rachel. You're just unheard. No one's ever said that to me before. Not like that. Lately, I've been writing letters I never send. To Daniel, saying everything I've buried. To my kids, promising them I'll never let them believe love means silence. And to myself, apologizing for all the times I called endurance strength and suffering loyalty. Here's when I wrote last week. Dear Rachel, you are not your marriage. You are not someone's reflection. You are not broken for craving peace. You are still here. You still matter. And one day, you will breathe freely again. I haven't made any big moves. No confrontations. No dramatic goodbyes. But I've started doing small things that feel like rebellion. I read again. I say no more often. I stay up late writing. Even if Daniel complains, I'm not beside him. I wear clothes I like, not the ones he chooses. I take the long way home. And sometimes when I'm alone in the car, I smile. Not because I'm happy, but because for the first time in years, I know I'm waking up. They say every woman has a breaking point. Mine wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was one quiet morning when I sat alone at the breakfast table watching my children laugh over something silly, and I realized they are the only real thing I have left in this house. Daniel had already left for a business trip. I didn't ask where. I never do anymore. I just watched my babies, Liam with syrup on his nose, Sophie singing with her mouth full, and something inside me settled. I don't want them to grow up thinking this is what love looks like. That night, I went into my father's study. It still smells like his cologne, even though he passed away 4 years ago. He always told me, never let someone else hold the keys to your cage, Rachel. For the first time, I understood what he meant. I opened the trust documents, the property folders, the corporate papers, all under my name. And slowly, methodically, I began the process, transferring ownership to a new family trust, with Liam and Sophie as the only beneficiaries, assigning a trusted lawyer as trustee, putting every single asset beyond Daniel's reach. It took weeks, quiet planning, careful signatures, zero emotion. By the time it was done, I no longer belonged to Daniel, and neither did my legacy. I told Daniel on a Tuesday. He was sipping whiskey in the living room, scrolling through his phone, barely looking at me. We need to talk, I said. He raised an eyebrow. About what now? I didn't flinch. Not this time. I've filed for divorce. Silence. He stared at me, not angry, not surprised, just calculating. You're not serious. I am. He laughed, a short, cold laugh. You forget everything in this life runs through you, Rachel. This house, the company, the estate. You think you can just walk away. I looked him straight in the eye. I already have. Everything is now in a trust for Liam and Sophie. You can't touch a single thing, and you never will. That was the first time I saw it, fear behind his control. Not because he was losing me, but because he was losing power. He stood up. You ungrateful little. Istutayer. Say it. One more time. Just once. And see how fast I make sure you never come near our children again. He backed off. Not because he respected me, but because he knew. I meant every word. The house feels colder now, but lighter. He moved into a downtown condo 2 days later. No custody fight. No dramatic pleading. Because without my assets, he had nothing to fight for. The kids don't ask about him much. And when they do, I tell the truth. Your father and I loved you, but love isn't always enough to keep two people together. Ethan never asked me about the divorce. He just said, I'm proud of you, not for leaving him, but for choosing you. People think divorce is the end, but for me it was the beginning of healing, of rebuilding my identity, not as Daniel's wife, not as someone's daughter, but as a woman rediscovering her own breath. I cry sometimes still, not because I miss him, but because I stayed so long in a place that never saw me. Freedom doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes in silence, paperwork, and a long, lonely drive away from everything you once called home. But I chose that silence, and in it I finally heard myself again. I thought walking away would feel like flying. It didn't. It felt like walking out of a burning building. Relieved to be alive, but covered in ash, lungs full of smoke, unsure if anything inside me would ever feel clean again. After Daniel left, the house echoed differently. The silence wasn't violent anymore, just unfamiliar. I could hear the refrigerator hum, my own footsteps on the tile, the kids laughing upstairs without fear of him walking in. For the first time in years, I sat at the head of the dinner table, not because I wanted power, but because I finally could. Still, it wasn't easy. Chicago's high society doesn't like divorce. They smile in front of you and whisper behind your back. She gave up everything. Maybe she was the problem. Bet she regrets it now. I used to care. Now, I just lower my sunglasses, hold my head higher, and keep walking. Because I didn't leave for them. I left for me. Liam became more protective. He's only 10, but he watches me now, like he's trying to take care of me when no one else will. Sophie asks more questions, wants to sleep beside me some nights, misses her dad, but doesn't cry for him. I let them feel everything. I don't lie. I just say, it's okay to miss someone and still be better off without them. It was weeks before I saw Ethan again. He didn't come rushing in. He respected the space I needed. But one evening, after picking up Sophie from ballet, I found a note in my mailbox. No name, just a handwriting I knew by heart. I'm here when you're ready. Not for answers, just for company. And somehow, that note made me cry harder than the divorce papers ever did. We met at a small cafe outside the city. No headlines, no pressure. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just said, you look tired, but real. And that's all it took. The wall inside me cracked. I told him everything. The way Daniel made me question my own reality. The guilt I carried for staying so long. The fear of never being enough, not for Daniel, not for anyone. He listened, just like always. Then he said, you were enough the whole time. He just never deserved to see it. We didn't fall into anything dramatic. There were no rushed kisses or late-night confessions, just slow dinners, long drives, quiet walks by the lake where I talked and he held my hand without asking for anything more. Ethan wasn't a replacement. He wasn't a savior. He was a mirror, reflecting back the parts of me I thought had died. The woman who laughed, who flirted, who trusted, who dreamed. One morning, months later, I stood in front of the mirror again. No makeup, hair messy, wearing a loose shirt that smelled like coffee. And for the first time in years, I looked at my reflection and whispered, I know you. I wasn't Daniel's wife. I wasn't the rich daughter hiding in a mansion. I was Rachel, a mother, a survivor, a woman with scars and the strength to show them. Sometimes freedom isn't about running away. It's about coming home to yourself. And this time, I'm not walking into anyone else's story. I'm writing my own.